No, I mean, there's a clip from it.
Oh.
We are live streaming. Tope mo e whio e tō mahmah. E ko kore ke u patapu pe mo hoiki. E o mā hamata pūre. Whakatulou mo Ngaahi. Tōnga katoa bea ku whake atu I he ngalu'i a me ngalu'i pe. Kore ke puke whenamari wani ki tai tari reiki mo tolu mo mea mai. Kau mai ki he Talanoa proklama lave'i mai I he hewhia whini. Whamālau atu I mo Tupu'anga ka mo kau mai. O whawhonga mina tolu na o fakahoko ai. Ngāwai koe ni. Toki tā loa sā mo Diane. Toki tā sen tā uwha. Mina tolu na whakatūtū ai show koe ni. Heni pia mo e ongo mata tau e ua I he hako ke immunology ko e whatotolo ke Ngaahi mea malu'i hotau sino o Diane pia mo Chris e tau whakawilo ake atu ki naua e se ini ki au mahalo sa ko tai reiki mo tolo on behalf of the lave'i mai show welcome to this session Talanoa session on immunology and vaccination and the sharing of ideas as we come together, not only as Tongans and Pacific Islanders, but as people who are concerned about the well-being of our communities. And I hope this evening's conversation will be enlightening and open us more avenues for discussion and help us as we try to deal with the current pandemic. I will start the program tonight with a short prayer. I'm not sure whether I can share with you my prayer. Yes, I can. It's a short Catholic blessing, and someone is smiling about Catholic blessing. But it's a very important blessing, and it's known as a Franciscan blessing. So I invite you to read the prayer with me, if you can. and it's on the screen. And I will read it slowly and then finish off with a very brief Tongan lotu. May God bless you with a restless discomfort about easy answers, half-truths, and superficial relationships, so that you may seek truth boldly and love deep within your heart. May God bless you with holy anger and injustice, oppression and exploitation of people, so that you may tirelessly work for justice, freedom, and peace among all people. May God bless you with the gift of tears to shed with those who suffer from pain, from rejection, from starvation, and the loss of all that they cherish, so that you may reach out your hand to comfort them and transform their pain into joy. May God bless you with enough foolishness to believe that you really can make a difference in this world, so that you are able, with God's grace, to do what others claim cannot be done. And may this Love and Might show offers a space for life-affirming conversations and sharing of ideas in order to empower, to uplift, advocate for those who are in need within our communities. And the blessing of God, the Creator, Jesus Christ, our brother, and the Holy Spirit, our advocate and guide, be with us and remain with us this day and always. Mo whawhirai he wharau mo whai te whini. Ka ngai whawhanga mai. I ngāo e mohangi ai. Pea whatāpakina ki mau tolu ku teo e vai vai. E ngai whakaukau. Hau maa ki mau tolu kau he tāna koe ni. Pea fua pea ola. E tokoni whaki. E mau kāinga. Kua whaala o Jesu Christ. Amen. Thank you.
Aloha pito, ati whamalo ke tata ik whawhikau tu e tāna asiri whakautai tu Tapu'aki mo ki tautolu I he whiawhiko e ni pia kōkore ke whakamalo atu he lotu lelei mo rea nā ne kamata ake e tāpura kalama I whiawhiko e ni. Tōku hingoa ko lo sa mua taane, ko e kau au he tō tahau ko co-host pia mo kau ngangawe ko seini tauwha I he whiawhiko e ni. Ko whatongia, ko e fakahoko atu ai taha o e tau kau ma tau tau e Talanoa mo ki tautolu I he whiawhini, aia ko e ki tangata talavo ko ni ko Chris wea ko Chris foki ko ene lele mai me lapa tataka mo Tonga kai pehege ki motu lahi taha I Tonga tapu ko atata pea uki ai foki a honokonga ki hapai potu ha feva pea mo ha ano. Ko Chris o ku lolotonga whai aho no toketa I he Immunologists I he University o Okalani. Pea o mau tari loto fia ko e Chris e whiawhiko ni ke tau whiko Talanoa aki. So I welcome Chris to our talk tonight. Chris is one of our few or only two immunologists here in New Zealand, and tonight we will hear from him to share with us, with our Tongan community across here in New Zealand and Tonga in across. So thank you for accepting our request to be with us tonight, Chris. Aloha pito.
Aloha pito. Tomo whatapeke whio tō mawhimafi. Yo talotlo Tonga pa ko kore ke huwhanga te ngai tal whatapu o sono a whaki e tātai kwhi Fekau e tok tā nā siri whakauta kai tumo mō kai ki whanga maari ko ni ke whaki wahe no no o Fekau te ngāwe aki whakataha mo ki mō tō hongo tō ape I he whakoloa ko ni hange koe na e lau ke alo sa mo tāne ko kui ngā ko Christopher Purivea pia te wahe te whiawhini a ki presentation no be o Fekau'aki pa moe pa mo ki tō piki koe ni koe Talanoa Fekau'aki pa mo Koviti-19 wa pia ko ki whanga maari koe ni ki share screen na reo Oku ki tānoa te waiwahi moe sia whini nofo whakatewhito pēia I he wailasi goi ni ko SARS-CoV-2 pēa te ulawe whoki ki ai ki he long COVID. Hagoe ai uhinga ai Koviti-19. Oku kono whakaloloa Koviti-19, oku ko e coronavirus disease ai na hake I he uawhetahiwa. Ko Koviti-19 ko e mahaki fokia oku whakatupuia e vailasi koe ni ko SARS-CoV-2. Pe ko no whakaloloa koe ni o SARS-CoV-2 ko severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus 2. Ko ki I misi fokia ni o vailasi en whakahatu koe. Oge ngai whakamatala ngai whakamoon kehe ko vailasi oku mofere pe mi he ngai mon man kehe upanga fufanga pe ngai patapu o mofere me ai ki he whahinga tangata pa ku hoko foke ni I he ngai mea mo'i kehe o kawai ai ngai a kau foki. Pa ko iai ai whakatata foki o hange ko SARS pa mo MERS aia na hake tū I mamani I he kōhiri. Koe vailasi foki o ku whiliuri waki maupe ai o malava I ke ne mau ngai whotunga kehe. Ka te lawe peki ai anai nai yangi. Ko Koviti-19 hange koe ko mo mea I o ku whakatu palpare maupito. O ku riunga wanoa ni whakatu tāmaki o whakatatau ke flu whakatu tāmaki taha ko tau siau sia. Ko uesia foki ai mo ue toko uangea 5 miliona. Ko more foki ai mo ue o te lahi angi he toko 5 miliona I mamani. Ko whika foki mo ripoti o whakatatau ono ripoti koe e World Health Organization ka ku ko te wanga ripoti ke o ku te lahi ang foki ai whika koe ni I 5 miliona. Ko ka mata ke habaene palpare mata hire magoe Koviti-19. Malava ke te uesia ai te tau mo'ui pe mi he long COVID. Ke long COVID ko ha palpare ma ku te whea moia ia Ngaahi mahina lahi hiri ai te magoe Koviti-19. Wailas whakoni ko SARS-CoV-2 ai ni whatupu ai Koviti-19. O kua no ngai kupu ke pakapau te tau whakaatalahi re vaia. Te tau te wakai ki ai mo tau sio ki loto ki ne ngai konga ke he koe ni. O kawai spike protein pe ko tau o ka I hono koftua. Ngoi ake he vailasi spike protein ko ni ke piki ke ngai kupu a hotau sino. O kia foki lipid membrane o ku ne ngawe ki hono kof mo no malu'i ngai konga kehe o vailasi ai o ku I loto. O kia me RNA ko whakahino ia ki hono Ngaahi mo no whakatu'u ai ngai kupu kehe o vailasi. O ku whakatata mahino pe ki he RNA ko hange hapalani o ku ngā ki he tangata Tupu'anga ke langa mo whakatu'u hawhare. O pehe tof pe RNA ko ni po whainohino ko ni. Ko whainohino ia ki hono Ngaahi mo no whakatu'u ai ngai kupu kehe ko toa pe o vailasi. Ei ono whakaosi ko nucleic capsid protein. O ku tokoni ki ne hanga puke ai RNA ko ni o vailasi. Pea ku ne tokoni ki he whawhanau mo no whakamofere atu ai vailasi. Hange koe na aku lawe ki mua koe na tula foki o vailasi o ku whiliuri waki maupe he taim ko toa pe. Pea ku malava pe ke lili wai ai ngahi kupu ke ai vailasi o ne mawai ha whotunga ke. Pea o whakatata pe ko hoko ai ngahi lili ko toa pe o hoko ia mi loto pe mi he RNA. Pea o ku hoko ai malava ke lili mo whiliuri waki ai vailasi ko ni magatounga I he whenga maari tau oange ai tau tukuange ke vailasi ke whakawhanau. Pea I hene pehe o malava ke hoka ngahi riu koe ni I he RNA o haki tua. O mawai he vailasi ha whotunga o kufo'o puka whotunga o kuke. Ika ke ngata ai o malava ke Fekau'aki ai ngahi vailasi koe ni o nau te mawai e founga ia o kuto keheangi I he founga koinu kui ko recombination. Pea o mahu'inga ke whatokanga I ko taimi o ku wheliuri wake vailasi ko hape e founga fo'o o ku te vavea ngai a ene mowhere. Pea te lahi ngai vailasi ko founga ia e ha lahi taha I hotau atakai. Pea o ku mahu'inga fuke te whatokanga iange ko vailasi foki o kuika ke nau alu whakatau taha lope ka o nau alu whakapupunga. Ko Koviti-19 Delta variant o ku mowhere ngofua. Ko Ngaahi wheliuri waki koni nai hoko I he vailasi. Ki mua fotunga motua koni na tau whea ao moia he tau kohiri I Nusilani. O ku wheliuri waki me ai o ne mau eia ai fotunga taha o ku waviange whengofua ngai ai ne mowhere. Ngai whakataata pe ko flu whakatau ai o tawanga mahen ki ai. Ko toko taha puke o malava ke mowhere ki ha toko wake. Ko e Koviti-19 fotunga motua e na tau whea au moia I he tau koosi ko toko taha puke o malava ke mowhere ki ha toko toluke. Ka ko Koviti-19 Delta variant ko toko taha o puke o malava ke mowhere ia ki ha toko fituke. Pea o ku te mahu'inga fuke whakatokanga o ku malava pea ke te wheliri waki ai Koviti-19 pe me fotunga koini kene te mau e ha fotunga taha o ku te vavea ngai mo whengofua ngai ai ne mowhere. Ia ki I konga koini o ko loto ke whakaha ai ngāue ai vailasi I hotau sino pe mhono mahu'inga koini ai antibodies pe me he kamataanga. Ko antibodies o hange ia ko e mahafutau o ku Ngaahi he system malu'i pe ko immune system ki hono malu'i ki tau tolu. Tai me o ku tau mau ai vailasi o ku Ngaahi e he vailasi ai tau koini ko spike protein o hao no koftua kini piki ki he Ngaahi kupu a hotau sino. Pia I hene pehe o ku ne hurewa ki loto pe o ku whawhanau ai o te tokolahi ngai ai vailasi foki. I he taim tatau pe o ku ne hanga uki ai Ngaahi sotia malu'i I hotau sino ai nuha te lan mata. Pea ko ngāwe ai whanki sotia malu'i ko ni no honga tamte ai Ngaahi kupu hotau sino ko hua ai vailasi. Pea niongo ko e ngāwe le rei eni o ku fakahoko he tau system malu'i ki ono malu'i ki tau tolu. O wai pe mo Ngaahi palpare make e malava ke hoko I he fakahoko ko ni e system malu'i ai ne ngāwe. Uruaki o malava ke ne hanga o uesia ai palanisi au tau system malu'i. Peka taimpe o ke palanisa au tau system malu'i o malava pe ke whaingofua ngai ka te tau tolu ke moua pe uesia au tau sino he ngai Tupu'anga kehe o hange ko kansa pe ko autoimmunity. Palpare me taha o ku te whaingofua ngai mowhere ai vailasi I loto I hotau sino ke Ngaahi kupu keheke. Pea I he ne mowhere ko ai vailasi o ku pehe foki pe mo system malu'i pe ko whanki sotia malu'i ko ni o nau tamate I ai Ngaahi kupu hotau sino ko hua ai vailasi. Pea I hene pehe whataha I ai ngo mea ko ni malava ke tau puke lahi au pito pea mau ki tau tolu he Tupu'anga fo'o ko ni ko long COVID. Ka au kapau iai ha antibodies paka mahafutau pe me he kamataanga. O ku malava he antibodies paka mahafutau ko ni o piki ki he spike protein paka ki tau ko nuha I he koftua e vailasi. Uni hanga tau fe vailasi me hu ki o tau sino I kai ke ngatai. Uni hanga uke ngai sotia malu'i kehe ke ne hanga o tamate ai vailasi. Pea I hene pehe uni whakahau whea ki tau tolu pe me puke lahi au pito paka ni whakahau ki tau tolu pe me he long COVID. Pe long COVID foki ko Ngaahi parpare make o ku te whea au moia hiri ai Koviti-19. Ko e taha pen ko e whanki I example pen o Ngaahi parpare magoia o ku ke whea au me kakai toko lahi hiri Ngaahi mahina lahi ai mau goia Koviti-19 o kawai ai whela ngāke ai sino pea no e mānawa pea pehe foki ki he uesia whakaatamai. Oku mahino mai me Ngaahi report kehe I mamani. Oku kehe pe ai Ngaahi whakailonga o long COVID. Pe oku whakatatau pe ia ke kakai kehe pe mo Ngaahi whanua kehe. Oku malava pe ia ke mau ai long COVID. O ka pau he ikai te ke puke lahi au pito pe he Koviti-19 wa. O ko kina tolu ko puke lahi au pito me Koviti-19 wa. I taim te tau wai pe nau whainga maarie. He ikai ke malava ia ke nau mau ai Ngaahi whakailonga koe ni o long COVID. O ka mata ke haa mai me Ngaahi whekumu Ngaahi ripoti kehe I mamani oku ko kakai oku te ki sisino ange. Oku lahi ange e nau whainga maarie ke nau mo ua I he long COVID. Pa ika ke ngatai, lahi ngai whenga maarie ke nau te mau o te fuolo angi whoki. Oku whakafofua ko toko taha I he toko tolu ko toa pe, ke nau mo ua I he Ngaahi whailonga koe ni long COVID, oku oa o ki he mahina e ono pe te lahi angi, hiri ai Koviti-19 wa. Ko Ngaahi whailonga anga maheni eni oku kawai ai no e mana wa, o Ngaahi palparema I he kete, pea mo uesia whoki ai atamai. O malava ke uesia kakai ko toa pe me he long COVID, me Ngaahi tau ke me he whanau wiki o au ke kakai lala. Oku whafofua ki nau tolu, oku mo ua nau sino I long COVID ke whafofua ke pesete tātolu, o e whanau wiki e wahaa e ta ua ke tahataha, ya whafofua ke he pesete taha 5.5, o e whanau wiki wahaa ta o e tahaua ke tahaono, pea koe kakai lahi ko ki nau tolu o kusia lahi taha I he long COVID, whafofua ke pesete tolu, o ki nau tolu tau tāwhitu o whai ki olunga. Pea ko hono whao si pe, o malava pe ke ia Ngaahi palparema, tu upau, hei kai te lava o fufaha no faito'o, makatuunga pe me he mau o whakatupu e vailasi I hotau sino. Pea I he ki whenga maari ko ni ko whakamalo eni ki he Morris Hawkins Center University o Kalani. Pea mo ki nau tolu ko toa pe ka unga aue, nau whetokoni aki mo whepopowaki, e no whotutu ki Talanoa ko ni ka pefoki ki he komiti ko ia TCCRG, ia toke tā ton whakahau pa ki lau mana slua, mga ko wau pailat, tok tā sona mui ata mo ki nau tolu ko toa pe e komiti, I he tokoni mo popou, ko ne whai maaku, kai pefoki ki o tau community Tonga, inu silani, kai pefoki ki o tau ki whanua I Tonga foki. Malo au bito.
Malo au pito Chris, yo o tō taimi ka ke hao o kaunga kau whataha mo mautou I he polo kalama I aho ni. Koutou I o mahu'inga au pito ki he kakai tonga ko toa pe o nau whanongo mai ke nau whanongo ki Ngaahi faka'ehi'ehi ki o ke whakamatala I he tau lea whakatonga. Ki mua pēo Fekau'aki atu ai tau lea whikawa ko loto peki o Fekau'aki atu au, ko pingoa ko Dr. Sein Taufa, pēo ko co-host whakataha mo losa mua Diane. Na e whanau pēo heni I Nusilani, pēo ko tui mana na e ngalo ke talato e losa e whitu hau me mi Tonga. Ka ko au ko kongo mātua ko te witawa ke Taufa mo I laise ma Taufa me kolomotua ko longa tonga tapu. Pēo ko takai whala ki whoaha apai ko tui ke konga mahu'inga taha. Ko oge tau lea o pehe si I kai ha. Pēo tau whawhetai ki he eiki I he malai o e sainisi, o iai tau kakai tonga, o kai ngata e nau tau ke ngāwe, ka o nau kau he tuu ki mua I he ngahi malai o nau iai. O kau ai, ai tau whiwhine tonga, ko toke tā Diane sika pautonu. Ko Diane, ko e Immunologists, pe o whaiako he University o Tako, he malai o e pathology, pe mo e molecular medicine. Na ne hoko ko e Fulbright Scholar, o mau e ni scholarship ke fakahoko e ni whatotolo I Amerika I he University o Iloa ko Harvard. Pea Glolo Tonga Associate Dean Pacific, Head Pacific Office I he University o Tako, e nau waa I Wellingtoni. Ko e ngo mātu a Diane ko teisa lātu sika me holopeka haapai, pea mo te vita sika whanonga me ne iafu vavao. Welcome, Diane. And before I hand it over to you to go through your presentation, also for our viewers, if you have any questions, please feel free to enter your question into the chat function. And my co-host and myself, we will facilitate those questions to Diane and Chris once Diane gets through her presentation. If you're happy to welcome you, Diane. I've done your introductions in Tongan. I'm happy for you to now share your presentation with us. Malo opito, Diane.
Malo apito Dr. Saini and to Losad, Chris, Asili and the rest of the team, and also to the listeners, Malo apito, thank you very much for this kind of opportunity, but also for the invitation to join you all this evening and to share a bit about COVID-19 and to talk about vaccines and about what this means for our people. Malo. And thank you also for introducing me and sharing where my parents come from in Tonga. And my mum is watching right now, and so is my family, and from New Zealand and some from Tonga as well. So a big shout out to all of them. Dr. Chris, Malo, thank you very much for reminding us all about the COVID-19 condition, but also talking to us about the virus as well. And a lot of questions that often come through are also to do with the vaccine and with vaccination. So that's what I'm going to be covering tonight. And we'll also cover some of the questions that often get asked in this particular context. So please bear with me. I have a PowerPoint to share. And so I'll just get that set up and share my screen. And then be ready to go. All right, so hopefully you can all see that now, if that's okay. If we just remind ourselves about what vaccines are supposed to do, they're supposed to help protect us from future illness. And what the COVID-19 vaccines do is help train our immune systems to be able to not only recognize the virus at a future date, but secondly, also to be ready to fight and to be prepared to mount an immune response that will destroy the virus. And so the vaccines mimic infection, but without giving us the illness. But they are a very important preventative measure in terms of stopping us from succumbing to the virus. And as Chris has reminded us, the virus that causes COVID-19 is called SARS-CoV-2. So we have COVID-19 vaccines that can help prevent us from being affected by the SARS-CoV-2 virus and ending up with COVID-19. And so essentially these vaccines keep us safe. I might just put this down, hopefully that's better. So the COVID-19 vaccines help to keep us safe, and perhaps something that people tend to wonder is, did we develop these vaccines too quickly? And does that mean that these COVID-19 vaccines aren't safe? And so to just sort of respond and share some context around how these COVID-19 vaccines were developed, of course, we're all aware that these were generated in response to a global pandemic that was moving around the world very, very quickly. And so what this meant was that scientists and researchers, doctors all around the world started sharing information and collaborating and working together in ways that perhaps they hadn't done before in order to try and find an answer in the form of a vaccine. What this also meant was that a lot of money became available from both public and private funding sources to help support this work, but also people were really motivated to try and help out with the vaccine effort. And so what this meant was that a whole lot of barriers started to come down that would normally be there and would mean that it would take a long time to get things done. But because we didn't have those barriers and people were motivated to work, but also to help out with the clinical trials, this meant that we were able to get some of the COVID-19 vaccines developed a lot sooner than we might have done otherwise. So it doesn't mean that safety shortcuts were taken, and it doesn't mean that the vaccines are not safe. The COVID-19 vaccines that have been approved for use are safe, and they have had the safety tests and all the processes that have been required in order to ensure that they are safe for everyone. So just a bit of background there. I'll just move to the next slide. And I'm aware that some of our listeners, many of our listeners will be from Aotearoa, New Zealand, but I've been told that some of our listeners are, well, I know some of our listeners are also linking in from Tonga. And so here in New Zealand, we have access to the Pfizer vaccine, and in Tonga, people have received the AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine, and some people will be getting the Pfizer vaccine. So just to provide reassurance that both of these vaccine types can protect you from the Delta strain of the SARS-CoV-2 virus. And Chris had very kindly reminded us that viruses can change themselves and they can adapt and they can become a bit more dangerous, and that the two COVID-19 vaccines that are being used in Tonga, but also the Pfizer vaccine that we're using here in New Zealand, can protect from the Delta strain of the virus. So examples of other viral illnesses that can be prevented by vaccination include the flu. So every year we have available the flu vaccine, which keeps us safe and protected from the influenza virus. And every year we get a new flu vaccine because every year the influenza virus changes itself. So this is another example of a viral of a virus that is capable of doing that. And so the vaccination development and processes adjust accordingly. Another example of a viral illness, which might not be so familiar to the young people who are listening, but might be to the older, mature folk who are listening in, is a condition called smallpox. And smallpox was a viral illness, but could also cause people to have these very distressing blisters that would break out around the body and would cause scarring. And a lot of people died from smallpox. And a very early vaccine was made a couple of 100 years ago with the help of some cows, because cows could also get a version of smallpox. And some of the immunity that they developed against smallpox could also help humans. A more recent version of the vaccine has been made and was so successfully rolled out and accepted by people that smallpox was a disease that actually disappeared in 1980. So just another example of how vaccines can work and how they can keep us safe, and it's really important that we get vaccinated. So to go back to the COVID-19 situation, the Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine is a type of mRNA-based vaccine. So it's made up of a messenger ribonucleic acid, which is a code. And I'll talk more about this shortly. But I just wanted to emphasize that there is no COVID-19 in the vaccine. So you cannot get COVID-19 from the COVID-19 vaccine, in case anyone was worried about that. And that's actually one of the questions that often gets asked. Likewise, with the AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine, there is no COVID-19 in the vaccine, so you won't get it if you receive the AstraZeneca vaccine. So just to reassure you of that, and also to point out that there's a slight difference with the AstraZeneca vaccine, and that this is a DNA-based vaccine, and I'll talk more about the differences shortly. So another thing that a lot of people end up asking is they want to know what's inside the vaccines. And so what you can see here is a list of the ingredients that you will find in the Pfizer vaccine. So there are 4 parts, right? So there's the mRNA part, and remember this is the code that will help the immune system make proteins that can help the immune system make the 2 big armies of immune cell types that can kill the virus. So the mRNA is the first part, that's the active ingredient. The second part is that there are 4 fats or 4 lipids inside the vaccine, and some of these lipids are there to help protect the mRNA, so they form a shell outside the mRNA, but they also help with transport, and they ensure that the mRNA can get inside the immune cells once they've been injected into your arm. The third part is that there's a bit of sugar, right? So there's some sucrose, and what the sugar does is protects the vaccine, because remember the Pfizer vaccine's kept at a very, very cold temperature, -70 to -80 degrees. So the sugar keeps the whole vaccine safe. And then there are 4 different types of salts. And these salts help with acidity or pH balance and just ensure that the vaccine is at the right pH. So these are the 4 parts or the 4 sets of ingredients that you will find in the Pfizer vaccine, and that is all. And this is how the Pfizer vaccine would work. So remember, it's an mRNA-based vaccine. So this is the mRNA piece here. So this is a code, and it's protected, remember, by the fats or the lipid nanoparticles, is a more precise word, phrase. And so once this gets injected into your arm, the mRNA piece inside the fatty shell or the lipid nanoparticles need to find an immune cell so that the mRNA can get inside. Once that mRNA code gets inside the cell, it has to get translated. So not into another language, but it gets translated into a protein. So this immune cell starts to make a new protein. And the protein that's made is a harmless version of the spike protein that's on the outside of the SARS-CoV-2 virus. So once those little protein parts have been made, these are the bits that help the immune cell be able to generate the 2 large armies that can kill the virus. And one of those armies are an army of antibodies, and the other army is an army of T cells. And both of these can destroy the virus. So that was about the Pfizer vaccine, what's in the Pfizer vaccine and how it works. This is about the AstraZeneca vaccine, and this is a recipe list or ingredient list of what's inside the AstraZeneca vaccine. And this is a schematic just to show how that will work. And it's very similar to how the Pfizer vaccine works. So the active ingredient, remember, it's not mRNA this time, but it's DNA. And the rest of the ingredients are what are called excipients, or they are ingredients that are not active, but they help keep the vaccine stabilized and protected. And so once you get your injection of the AstraZeneca vaccine, what is inside, remember, is the DNA. And what is protecting the DNA is, instead of this fatty shell, we've got an adenoviral vector shell that helps keep the DNA safe. And so the same process needs to happen where the DNA inside the adenovector viral case needs to get inside an immune cell so that the DNA is delivered. Once the DNA gets inside the cell, the DNA needs to be converted to mRNA, and it's done so via a process called transcription. And then once we have the mRNA there, then the mRNA can be translated into the protein bits, and then the protein bits can help drive and make the 2 big armies of antibodies and T cells that can destroy the virus. So the AstraZeneca vaccine and the Pfizer vaccine work very similarly to each other. It's just that one has mRNA and the other one has DNA. Excuse me. Another question that's often asked is around the side effects for the vaccines. And so what you can see here is a list of all the mild or the common mild side effects that you might see with the Pfizer vaccine, and a list of the mild side effects that you'll potentially see with the AstraZeneca vaccine. So what you can also see is that a lot of these mild side effects like sore arm, getting a fever, joint pain, muscle aches, fatigue, headache are very similar between the two. However, they just occur in different proportions. So in other words, mild side effects are very, very common, but they often resolve within about 48 hours. Serious side effects are very, very, very rare. And what tends to happen with a new vaccine when it's introduced is that there are so many tests and so many checks that are undertaken that serious side effects, again, don't happen very often. But if they do, they will often arise not long after the vaccine has been introduced. So for those people who are worrying about whether or not 10 years down the track we would all of a sudden find out that there's something, that there is another serious side effect to the vaccines, that's very unlikely to be the case. We've seen just about everything that's likely to take place now. So just to reiterate that what the SARS-CoV-2 virus and COVID-19 can do to your body is way worse than what the vaccines can do to your body. So just to summarize that there are mild side effects, which are very common, but they often clear up by themselves. There are serious side effects that can occur, but these are very, very rare and often don't take place. And that what the virus and COVID-19 can do to you is way worse. So back to the COVID-19 vaccine. So just a reminder that the vaccine, whether it's an mRNA vaccine or a DNA vaccine, these bits need to get inside your immune cells. And what you can see here spinning is an immune cell type, and this is called a dendritic cell. It's a type of antigen presenting cell that is what your immune system needs to give instructions to make large armies of virus killing cells. And so dendritic cells are also involved in the process of generating COVID killing antibodies and COVID killing T cells. And this is how that happens. So if you get the Pfizer vaccine, remember this is an mRNA based vaccine that's encapsulated by fats and lipids that help protect it and deliver the mRNA inside the immune cell, inside this antigen presenting cell or dendritic cell. If you're getting the AstraZeneca vaccine, it's a similar process. It's just that it's not mRNA, but it's DNA that gets delivered in this adenoviral vector that surrounds the DNA.
Are we not hearing Diane?
No.
Sorry. Okay.
Okay. While Diane is coming back on, should we ask, I think we should just ask some questions. Losa, would you like to ask Chris his question? Around, yeah.
The first question, kaveinga. Sorry, Sani, I'm scrolling down with the question you want me. There's a question here. I think I'll leave that question for Diane. So how can we trust that the information that Chris and Diane have told us aren't being dictated by the government? And I think that's a conversation that probably, do you want to have a respond first to that, Sini, because you and I are coordinating this conversation, and it's a platform that the reason why we bring our own people, ko uhinga ni, ko tau whalalaanga ni, ki nau tokoni, ki tau tol, ki tau mahi no i angi ai Ngaahi mea huhu. So I think ko whehuia nia ki tau ko hai uhinga na ta whai ai omi e kamata tau ko ni.
Malolo sa o tau pehe whakotonga koe whanua ka inga. And pēr ko o mai koe ai whehui ko e ni na utohi ka losa, and I said, you know, neongo e ngai malai o mau ngau e ai he ke mau lava to e tonga me mau tolu. We are Tongan, and we have a duty of care to ensure that we are disseminating the right information ke malu'i tau kakai. Pa ko tui koe uhinga na ma Fekau'aki ai ke o mai Chris pea mo Diane ke nau wahe atu ai Ngaahi ilo o nau ma'u moi malai o nau tau ke ngau e ai. Just to highlight the fact that, you know, neither Chris nor Diane work for a government agency. Koe nau he ni, koe nau ofa I kakai Tonga, me nau whia mao ke tupu atu ai Ngaahi whakamatala o ku nau ilo I he uesia o nau whai, me whaatotoro o nau whai o tonu. So that's my short answer for it. We know that they're not, there's no conspiracy behind, you know, them being bribed by the government and so forth, because first and foremost, they are Tongan, and their reasoning behind coming on here is to provide scientific facts for us to take on board. Losa?
Popo at pe ki he Talanoa ki whai sein, ako tui lahi koe taim tatau pe tau whakauka whuka ki tau tolu. Hei kai ke tau hangai ki tau tolu o malanga I ha vaccine o ku I kai ke malu'i aki a e tau mātua. He kou tui lahi hange ko koe pe amuau, kapana ta ilo koe faito'o e whakatuta maki ki e tau mo mātua, ki e tau whakakui, na kou tui lahi kai ke taloto pe he. So I think it comes back to your answer. Koe mau ihe ni, koe whai whatongia pe, ke whahai wahe atu a ilo o mama. Ka ko pehepo mo ke tuha whai ngā maari e ki he whai Fekau, ke ne whai mai pe mo haane ki tokoni a ana he kou tui koe taria koe ni o tawomi ko toa pe ki hen I he uhinga tātau koe ofa ki ho tau ngai whamiri, pia moi ofa ki ho tau ki whonua, pia pehepo ko tau kainga I Nisilani.
Malo, ko whi malo beo kia Chris ka ma Diane I he information offer Fekau'aki Talanoa e whiawhini. Ko tui koe konga fuwhi e maua pito. E tau kakai. Ngani me whoki koe e whainga kai ke kehe tau tilo mo. Kakai ku nau teke fu mahino whau e. Ilo ke mahaki pe mo e faito'o. Pe ngau nau mai information pe nau. Honga ia information ko ia. Wale mo whahinga. Ku I kai peke nau lot na toke mahino. Hi aku tene mau information ko ia foi whananga ngau nau no whai. Ko te awe aku koe taimi mōre e tau nafki whaton tonu e ni pehe. Ako whiko whakaha pe wia ngō tahine lo saka ma sein. Professor Chris pe mo Diane. Aku mo to lahi pe no whai ngā we. Pe mo hono fakahoko whatongia koe ni. Knowing koe toko lahi tahe kai na Tonga. Koe toko lahi tahe ki mautou o kui ngai siasi. We have your back. There will always be resistance I Ngaahi whaiduwha. Ako whangi minority groups. Aku whakamāwhana a bita e Talanoa whai krisi. E maa wahe whai. E Diane bako te whia ni he. O kuma mata mai Facebook a mi Tonga mo eni. Maa ki whawabe ia.
Chris, Ke ma pe ke ai pe hao ki hata di oka pa o ke fema ke tokon ke tana ki mai while we're waiting for Diane, she's trying to log back on.
Yeah, malava pito mo whenga maare ko tu ko kauen he hui mahu'inga pito he tainimi pa ko tu e lava pe mo tae no tāna ki kia ko me pe e taha ke whakatokanga i hange koe na e lava kia Dr. Sen tau wha o ku i kai whoke ke aha ku affiliation pa mo e pureanga kai pehe ki he Ministry of Health. Pe i kai ke ngatai ko whok mo Diane na talupe e ma fakahoko mau Ngaahi presentation ko ni pa mo outreach ko ni me folo apeia ki mo apeia e kamata ke e mo fere mai e Koviti-19 i hotau kakai pe o koe ko ha toki ngāu i pēnia na e whakahoko ki muini mai ka ko ngāu i pēnia na e whakahoko Diane ki mo i he South Island ka pēwhoki ki tokoni aki pe a pēwhoki a te au o ko whawhingau e whakataha pe mo e scientist e taha ko tokita Natalie Netzler i hono whakotūtū e Ngaahi Talanoa ko ni pe tokoni mai pe ki ai mo pōpō mai ki ai Morris Wilkins Center pe mo University o Kalani i he nau whakatokangai o ku lahi Fekau'aki Ngaahi whakamatala kui kai ke mooni i o tau kaveinga Pasifiki ka pēwhoki he Māori pe nau loto ai ke nau pōpō mai mo tokoni mai i he tawhākoe ai kai ke ngata pe ai ka ko ki nau tolgo ni he community Tonga i Nusilani ko ku nau te tokoni mai whoki mo pōpō kia te au ka o mā Diane pe mo tokita Natalie Netzler i hono whotūtū polokalama ko ni pa ko ngai whamatala ko ni o ma vahe atu o ku i kai ko whamatala pe ia mia maua hono whotūtū e maua ka kumagatounga me ngai whekumi ai kau sainis ko toa pei maamani ka kumawhenga peo malere i taha ke mahanga o mi ai whakamatala ko ia whakamao po opo i ha founga e lava ke te whaingofua ngai hono mahinoi e he tau kakai Pasifiki kai pēwhoke e Māori. Ai koe ki tari pe tāna ke ai tok talo sa malo.
Malo pito, Chris, and thank you everyone. We managed to answer the question without while you were trying to get back on Diane, so we'll come back to you.
Aloha pito everyone. Sorry about the IT issues at my end, and thank you everyone for covering. I'm just
sorry, Diane. There's a whole stream of questions coming through, and I'm mindful of time. Are you okay if we just go into some Q&A?
Yes, that's okay.
Okay. Before we go into the Q&A, a question that I had for both you, Diane, and Chris is, can you just, for our listeners, just describe what an immunologist is, just to set the scene? And for you, Diane, and Chris, what was it that made you want to pursue a career as an immunologist? So that's the first question before we go into the next lot, Marlo.
Okay, yes, well, and the short version is an immunologist studies the immune system, and there's a very close connection between how our immune system functions and health. And when our immune system doesn't work well, or if there are certain parts of the immune system that don't work well, this can cause particular conditions. And I'm very interested in cancer, but I'm also very interested in other conditions as well. And I research that's focused on cancer research and also on rheumatic fever, rheumatic heart disease. So Chris, over to you.
Yeah, malava pito Diane. Tarea te Diane definition goia o immunology ko uhinga na ku sa ia manaka i he malai ko ni ko whakatokanga i ko immune system o ko system malu'i wene ngai lave'i pe Ngaahi Tupu'anga ke he o kawai kansa pe kawai infectious disease pe autoimmune disease pe wai pe ine Fekau'aki pe mo metabolic disease o hange ko type 2 diabetes pe nau whakaukau ko system e mahu'inga pito ka pau te taulava o wako ke tauhanga mahinoi whakalelei e Ngaahi Ngaahi mea o uesia e sistem ko ni ka pate talava o whakalelei pi whakatontonui na alawa ke tauhanga o Tokanga kina Ngaahi Fekau'anga ke he koni hangia ko kansa mo infectious disease o kawe Koviti-19. Malo?
Malo. Sorry, apologies, Diane. I just wanted the viewers just to kind of set the scene so that we all understand what an immunologist does. Now I'd like to ask you if you could just carry on with the rest of your presentation, please, because it's coming up on the chat. Our viewers want to see the rest of your presentation, Malo, Diane.
No problem, and thank you very much, Saini and team. All right, so I think where I managed to lose everyone, sadly, was towards the end of that section anyway. So we just finished off talking about how vaccines stimulate the immune system and train the immune system to be able to recognize the virus at a future date, but also to be able to be ready to fight against the virus using two big armies of immune cells. And so I talked about the antibodies, and we often hear about antibodies being shared you know, in the media and talked about there, but we often don't hear about the T cells. And they are also very powerful COVID killers as well. And in fact, the antibodies kill very differently to the CD4 or to the T cells. But nevertheless, having both armies ready to be able to fight against COVID is really important. And so if it's okay, I'll just quickly try and shoot back to the PowerPoint. So I'm just going to share my screen again. Okay, so hopefully that's just showing up. And this was just the last slide to just wrap up what we had been talking about in terms of the vaccines. And so for those people who get the Pfizer vaccine, you'll know that both doses, dose 1 and dose 2, are both the same, but you have to have a gap in between them. And what that first vaccine dose does is it primes the immune system. So you get a little bit of protection. You also get some increase in antibody levels, so they go up a little bit, but you need to have time for that immune response to mature, and then you come in with that second dose, which is when you get much more powerful protection. So you get a boosting effect when you get your second COVID-19 vaccine dose. And this also gives you much longer lasting COVID-19 protection against COVID-19. And then again, you've got to wait for a little bit longer, about 2 more weeks after you've had your second dose, where you then become fully immunized. So that's when you are fully protected against COVID-19. And so just to help emphasize the importance of getting that second dose, because we had some information that was released here in New Zealand that showed that lots of people have had their first dose, but there's a group of people who still haven't had their second dose as well, even though they've had more than a 3-week gap. So this is just to help make that point about the 2 doses being very, very important. So that's a bit about how the COVID-19 vaccines work, how they train the immune system to be ready with an army of antibodies and with an army of T cells to be able to protect and protect you from COVID-19, but also to kill the virus. And what it is that I'll just move on before I summarize at the end, and I'll just kindly ask Chris if he can help me just summarize at the end in Tongan. What it is that I'm just going to do now is look at what this means for us as Pacifica peoples, and specifically, why is it that for us as Pacific peoples, we seem to have a higher risk of ending up with COVID-19? And so there was some information that was made available at the beginning of the pandemic back in 2020. And sadly, this was data and evidence that was coming out of the United States, which showed that for Pacific people living in America, that they were more likely to end up seriously unwell with COVID-19, more likely to end up in hospital, and sadly more likely to end up dying from COVID-19. And last year, towards the end of the year, we had an outbreak here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, which also showed some similar trends. And this showed that it was actually Māori and Pacifica peoples here in New Zealand. We were the two groups that were at greatest risk of becoming unwell from the infection with SARS-CoV-19 and ending up really sick with COVID-19 and needing hospitalization. So we had information from overseas, and we also had evidence from here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, that Māori and Pacific were vulnerable to being disproportionately impacted and affected by COVID-19, and therefore would need prioritization, particularly for vaccination, but also for any testing efforts and COVID-19 prevention efforts as well. So just to show that we weren't making this up, we had strong evidence to indicate this would be the case. And so some of the reasons that our people might be at higher risk include the following. So a lot of our Pacific peoples are more likely to come into contact with the virus, because a lot of our people live in the Auckland region. A lot of our people are employed and work at MIQ facilities. A lot of our people also work at the border. And also, as Chris has reminded us, we are now dealing with the Delta variant, or the Delta version of the SARS-CoV-2 virus, which is way more highly transmissible and more dangerous in the community setting. So for us as Pacific people, we were much more likely to actually come into contact with someone else who was carrying the virus. So that was something that put us at greater risk than lots of other people. The other thing is that our Pacific peoples are very communal, and within our households, we often live as intergenerational households. So meaning we often have little ones, and we often have very elderly living all under one roof. And that in itself is nothing bad. That's the way we live, and that's the way we lived in Tonga, and that's the way we live here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. But what this means, though, is that because of the Delta variant, because it spreads so easily and it spreads so quickly, that once it gets into someone in a household, it will spread very quickly. And so everyone living within that household will eventually catch the Delta version, or the Delta variant of the virus. So because we're more likely to live in intergenerational households, which is not a bad thing. Remember, it's the virus that's the problem, not our people. Because we're dealing with Delta, it means that once someone in our household gets infected, that it will spread to everyone else who's in the household. The other thing is that for our people, a lot of us already have one health condition anyway. And so what this means is that if we've got a pre-existing health condition, it means that our immune system is already busy trying to take care and manage that particular condition. So when COVID-19 comes along, this is added pressure and added strain on the immune system. So this is why pre-existing health conditions or comorbidities or other illnesses mean that we are at much higher risk of ending up with serious illness as a result of COVID-19. So in other words, pre-existing health conditions have a health impact in this particular context because our immune system is already trying to fight other conditions. So it's already under pressure and having to now do extra work. So another reason that our Pacific people can be at higher risk of COVID-19 is because we can experience barriers when trying to access healthcare, particularly here in New Zealand. There can be transport barriers, there can be language barriers sometimes. There can also be barriers in the way systems are set up, which don't really help or don't really work for our communities. And so what this can mean is that sometimes we don't get the healthcare that we need at the time that we need it. So this is another reason that we can be at higher risk of COVID-19 or serious illness as a result of COVID-19. So in New Zealand, we have a housing crisis because we don't have enough homes. But on top of that, we have many of our homes are actually of a standard that doesn't match international standards. So what that means is that we have a housing quality issue as well as a high demand for housing also. And so what this means is that sometimes houses can be overcrowded, and for our people, we can have lots of people living under one roof. And so overcrowding itself is not just an issue for us as Pacific, it's an issue for a lot of people. However, there is health impact, particularly because we are dealing with the Delta variant of the SARS-CoV-2 virus. So this means that if we are experiencing housing challenges, that this can mean we are at higher risk of serious illness and serious impact from COVID-19. Another reason that puts us Pacifica peoples at higher risk is that we can experience racism, and there are systems or system designs that don't really work for our people. And so again, what this means is that it can be really hard for us to get the healthcare that we need when we need it. And this can have health impact, particularly if we need to get help quickly. And remember, we're dealing with the Delta variant of the SARS-CoV-2 virus, and this can affect us as a people, and it means that we can miss out on the healthcare that we need when we need it. Another reason that sometimes people can be at high risk of COVID-19 is if there are financial challenges, and anyone can have financial challenges. And for us as Pacific, if we are experiencing financial challenges, this can mean that we don't have access to the resources that we need to help keep us safe and protected, but also to help get us the healthcare that we need when we need it. And so this is an example of how socioeconomic influences and situations can also put us at higher risk of serious impact from COVID-19. So what does this all mean? What this means is that for us as Pacific people, we have evidence to show that we have higher risk of ending up with serious illness and ending up in hospital as a result of COVID-19. So this is more reason for us to please ensure that we are vaccinated. Also, that if we need to get tested, that we get a test done, but also to follow the rules as well, and to help others around us, and to try and ensure that not only that we are protected, but that others around us are protected too. And also to ask for help if we need it. So as Pacific people, you know, we've been able to show New Zealand what we're capable of doing when barriers are broken down. And what I'm referring to are some of the vaccination efforts that our Pacific health workforce and our communities have been driving and have been leading to help try and get our people vaccinated. And I'm so proud of the efforts that have been made, and of the activities and the events and that have been organised to help support vaccination for our people. And these are, and I know there are lots of different examples, and I've just got a few here to highlight the various different groups. So the Samoans, the Tongans, the Cook Islanders, the Niueans, the Tokelauans, and many, many other groups. And I'm just so pleased that people have been able to see what we can do as our communities, and how it is that we can rally, and how we can mobilize when we are given the right tools, when we are given the resources, but also when barriers are broken down. And also just to do a shout out to some of the vaccination events that have been happening here in Wellington as well. So I just wanted to just finish off with a couple of points. And the first of which is to look, we might have all been vaccinated, but we might know people who haven't had their vaccine yet. So please reach out to them and try and help them to get vaccinated as well. And let's help our Pacific health professionals, our doctors and our nurses who are working so hard to try and help get our people vaccinated. So let's help them out as well. And that by getting vaccinated, you demonstrate your commitment to keeping others safe. So it's not just about keeping ourselves safe, it's about keeping our families safe as well. And by protecting those who can't protect themselves right now, because remember, our little ones don't yet have access to a vaccine that can keep them safe. So the next best thing that we can do is to make sure we get vaccinated and that others around are vaccinated as well. And I know Saini, Dr. Saini and Dr. Lossa had asked for introductions and family information. So I hope this is all right. I've finished talking about COVID-19, but happy to answer questions, but I've got some pictures here of my family. So this is my father, Devita Sika Whanonga from Neafo and Vava'o, and also my mother, Adesa Latu Sika from Holopeka in Ha'apai. And this is my husband, Reno. He's not Tongan, but he's Samoan Niuean, and this is our daughter, Alicia. So she's a real fruit salad, and hopefully she's listening tonight as well. And this is my father's rugby photo. He used to play rugby for Tonga, and this is Sika, Devita Sika here. And he would be so proud if my father were alive today to know that you were all looking at his rugby photo. So thank you very much for letting me slip that in. And again, just wanted to emphasize that there is a work for us all to do to help and support our communities. And this is some of the work that we've been doing to try and help our little ones as well. And I hope it's all right. This is my last slide, but this is a quote that I just wanted to leave with you all. And it's from Albert Einstein, who's Tongan. He's got a nefogola, but you can't actually because of his moustache. But anyway, and what he said was that those who have the privilege to know have the duty to act. And I know that that's why we're all doing the work that we do. And I just wanted to take this opportunity to say malo alpito, thank you to you all for what it is that you're doing to try and help support our communities at this time. So thank you for listening, and happy to try and take questions.
Malo apito, Diane, and like every Tongan Talanoa, we either go very late or we carry on until we get shut down by the our Facebook page. Sorry, I really do. We've been questions are flooding in, so I'm going to ask the first couple of questions. But I think in saying that, I'd like people to actually keep posting your questions, because if we can't answer them tonight, then we'll be able to probably see if we can have another forum, and we'll try and answer all those questions for you, if that's okay. Diane, is vaccine harmful for pregnant women, and in particular for Pacific women?
Dr. Lossa, that's a great question. So the short answer is the vaccine is not harmful for pregnant women. If anything, it's really important that pregnant women get vaccinated. You can protect yourself, but importantly, you can also protect your baby as well. So please, please get vaccinated. For us as Pacific women, even more reason for us to be protected. In fact, there was some data that came out of the UK that showed that a large number of the women who'd ended up in ICU were pregnant women. So please get vaccinated. The vaccine, the COVID-19 vaccine, is safe for you, and it's safe, and it will keep your baby safe too.
And one very common question that's been coming through, and I don't know where this question is coming from, Tonga or from here in New Zealand. Chris, ka take whakamatala I mai e baby virus or weak positive, and maybe Diane, could you also please explain to us weak positive?
Diane, did you want to take a stab at this first, and then I'll do a quick translation?
Yeah, no problem. But so in terms of a weak positive test, which can happen sometimes, this can be as a result of someone having a small amount of virus that has been left over from a previous infection. And sometimes it can actually take our bodies a long time to completely get rid of the virus. And so if there is a bit of virus that is still lingering in the body, this can show up as a weak positive result. And the way in which weak positive results are treated is out of an abundance of caution. They are treated as if they have positive, well, they have tested positive for COVID-19, but they're put into isolation, and all precautions must be taken until such time as the situation has been resolved and more investigations have been undertaken to determine why there was a positive result. And sometimes you can get a weak positive result, and then after a bit of time the person is tested and then they can end up with a negative result, and that commonly happens. But the important thing is that it's treated carefully as if the person has COVID-19, and that's very important because people need to be kept safe.
Yeah, malava to Diane, hangi peko ko mea kona lave'i Diane, hangi peko nagwhamatalago ki moka wala sifo ke koe ke alwhaka tau taha o lope kau no alwhaka pupunga. Ia tai mini iho si ki pupunga pa ia tai mini iho ku nau wha tokolahi foki. Peko ki fo I sivi koe ni kono tesi pe ku positive pe negative hangi koe nagwhaha koe he kui presentation ni whanga mahe ni kono whakasio ka pa o ku asi ki fo I konga koe ni koe nuclear capsid o ku mahe no lewa positive peka pa te lahi hangi vai lasi positive peka pa lewa weak hangi koe ni koe whamatala Diane malava pe ia ke uhinga o ku sivi'i ene ha I ka ke ngā tai ku malava pe ke ne mau ki mua ka ukia ki foi waha tai mia o ku ke ngāua kia hotau si no ke te hanga o whenga ke osi pe ke puria a pito. Ko mea pe taha ku mahu'inga ki whato Ngaahi, ko baby virus o koe ko Hawaii las for all weni, ka kono natula pe no whatata mono whakamatala o ku te ki si ange whangi pupunga ko ni o koe ko ha pe ke whakapupunga lahi au pito. Pea I ka ke ngatai hangi pe koe na lave'i kia Diane o ku mahu'inga o ka paulewa o ku asi ha Fekau'aki pe ko ha result o pehe o ku weak positive o ku mahu'inga ke tau Tokanga ki tau tolu tau hanga pe tau tolu tau pehe pe ki tau tolu ko positive tau ia ene mawhai ke mawhere wa ene mawhai ke uesia ki tau tolu o ku lakange tau faka'ehi'ehi be precautionary have precautionary measure ke tau hanga whakasi'i whainga maarie ke te mawhere ai pe ke hoko ha palparema e community mhargo ki tari pe ke tanaki ki ai malo.
Thank you, Chris. A quick one here, and I think I'm going to make the call on that one. It's access to your presentation. So can I say yes to that, both presenters? People are asking for your presentation. Is it okay, or am I making a call on that to say yes?
I can make available a modified version. So all the content.
There we go. Yep. So that's a yes to those who asked that question. A question here: how can young people safely inform our families and parents without getting shut down by parents? And I think it will be also a good question for Fekau'aki ke tokoni mai ki he tali o whehui ko ia. Okay, nice, dear.
Well, whatever te lave'i au ngā ue. Ia, oku tahu pe kakai utau ilo ku whangata ano whakamahina ngā zau mono convince ke nau sivi pe whai huhu. Kako te aku mahu'inga pito whakamatala le hanga koe Talanoa whai Diane pe mo Chris mahina pe koe Ngaahi technical language o Ngaahi Ako te pe lava vete simplify ke lava hei tau whanau o whakahuhu le ki he mātua. E mene koe whakalaka te pe whakamatalai o mamawhanga he pana tolo palpare mare mai. Aku tokoni a bito to make it as simple as possible. Ke lava convey whakalelei ki mātua mo. Mahalka mika mea lahi ke whakanonga ka ki nau tolu o ku. Peki ha me whatu tāmaki. E tokoni ki mōi rei whalufua e family.
Maraka Feka. Chris, did you want to add anything to that?
Ko mahako ki me pe ke tāna ki Ketau, ko whakatala Talanoa mau pe ke Talanoa mau pe whanau ko mga mātua I ha founga o ku whakaapa-apa o ku whaapapa e ngā mātua. Pa I he taim te tau pe malava I he mātua ke nau whepo Talanoa aki pa nau whanau ke iaha whemahino aki. I he tek nau tō mahako ki tāna pe malo.
Malo. Well, so I've got some questions. Is the host DNA affected in any way by the vaccine? And that's a question, Diane, if you can answer, and Chris, if you can also provide your take. So is the host DNA affected in any way by the vaccine?
Marlo, thank you for that question. Sorry, my cat's just jumped up on me. In terms of the, is the host DNA affected? The short answer is no, it is not affected. So with the Pfizer vaccine, which has the mRNA piece, that doesn't go anywhere near the nucleus, right? So that stays outside the DNA in the cytoplasm. And that's where that translation process happens into the proteins, and then the proteins make help make the two armies of immune cells. In terms of the AstraZeneca vaccine, so that has DNA in it, and that DNA does get into the cell, and that cell does not get incorporated into the host DNA, but it has to get transferred and undergoes a process called transcription. So it gets turned into mRNA, and then that mRNA works in the same way as it does for the other vaccine to make the two, make the protein and then protein bits and then the two armies. So the short answer is no. Over to you, Chris.
So ki tari no peke ki tāna kwawe peko tari ke I kai uko ke lava hu malu'i o uesia o DNA. I kai ke ngatai o ku taim no pe ene nofo I he seli o tau sino pe ko hanga tau sino ki ta tolo maui o tamatei uru break it down pe ko ki tari peke I malo.
Okay, and another question here. Although we're from Victoria and we do have hesitancy from our Tongan communities about the vaccination, how do you plan to advocate for them?
I have a short message, if that's okay, and then I'll hand over to Chris. So it will be to help ensure that people understand that getting vaccinated is not just about protecting yourself. Getting vaccinated keeps other people safe, other people around you safe. And so I do not want to be responsible for making other people sick. So I know that I've been vaccinated to keep myself safe from COVID-19, but I'm also keeping other people around me safe because I don't want to be responsible for others becoming unwell, particularly those who can't protect themselves, and that includes children.
Malota Diane, ko ki tari no vawe pe ko hiri fakahoko Ngaahi outreach program ko ni matifu ko ma tau mua ke ma Talanoa o Fekau'aki pe mo ngai whakamatala loi o ku whialuaki aia ko homaki tau kei pe o mau o ku whatokanga o toi ai mo ngahi uhinga ke heia o ku uesia ai whahinga talo te whito ke tau youth o magatunga pe I he whalala ki he pureanga po ko whalala ke ngahi mawhai o whonua pa ko tui mahalo ko taimene o e ao ngai hangahi tau kei kehe ke nau Talanoa ki he loto o kulerea, mai atamai o kulerea, ke whahano whakanongononga, whahinga ko nipa ko tui mahalko ki mea lahi e malava ke wako ui ai, whatata pe miha taha uto ki tau keang he malai ko ni, ka mahu'inga ke tau whengau e whakataha, ke tau lava o Fekau'aki, mo poupou, mo tokangai kina, ki nau tolu kulerea, ho nau loto pa mo nau atamai, ke ewa te tau fu alo atu o whahano whakatonu I mo whahano teke mo whaihono mea katauhanga o whai ia founga o kuanga malu, mo founga moko, mo founga ofa foki. Kumako ia peki tāna ki malo.
Malo, Chris. Koe ki te hui, malo e whakamatala, o iai had weak negative, ke hange koe weak positive. So Diane, what we're being asked is, because there's a weak positive, is there also a weak negative? Or is it just negative, positive, weak positive?
No, that's possible. And so that's why a lot of focus and a lot of careful work is undertaken in order to try and unpack what someone's test results might be showing, because there's a particular threshold and your results from the COVID-19 test can either be just above or just below, or a large, it can be quite a distance above the threshold or quite a distance below. So there is variation that can happen, and that's often unpacked to ensure that that the correct interpretations and therefore actions are undertaken.
Yeah, Malo, did you want me to just quickly translate that? And I go oku ne whamatala ko ne tae no o wai mea ko threshold ko whaikehi'eanga ia o positivi pa mo negativi. Paka pau ko whaikehi'eanga pa ko threshold he ko weak positive o malava peke I he. Ko matuak positivi au pito o ku I olunga au pito ia. Ka ku tatau pe pa mo negativi ko matuak negativi ku ilalo au pito. Ka ku malava pe ia ke nofo pe ia he just under the threshold. Pako mahu'inga ia ke tau fakahoko ai test ke tau repeat mo whakapapau o ku ko founga ko ne fakahoko ai test ngai sivi'i ko ni o ku fakahoko whakalere. Ko ia peki tāna ki malo.
Malo, Chris, I think I am going to wrap it up now. Whakamalo atu gatik motor kato he ma whainga malie. And from me and my co-host, thank you so much to everyone who's been listening in. I know that there'll be lots and lots of questions. We will attend to try and answer those questions, and we'll probably be able to run another series in the next few days. See, I make this decision online and haven't actually consulted with my team. So, but we'll come back to you. The one message from me is Associate Dean from the Division of Sciences is a word of encouragement. Encouraging students, encouraging families. Science is not only medicine. Here are careers that you can actually, that we need more of those. We need more of Diane. We need more of Chris. Uhi ke lava tokoni hotau family hotau kaveinga ke nau mahino mahu'inga maali ai Ngaahi whakamatala ko toa pe o mawhima o ki whai ake tokoni ka te kimotolu. And I'll leave my co-host Sini to have the last word before go to ki he tātai Fekau'aki ni whakaose e tau po Talanoa he te awhiko ni malo.
Malo au pito losa. O te whamalo lahi au pito kia Diane mo Chris. Thank you so much for giving us, giving up your time to be here with us. I think at the au lahi au pito e tau ilo o kwai pet tau kakai Tonga o nau tau ke he malai ko ini. Na e lave'i Chris ke mea ko misinformation e tau tāna ke Ngaahi whakamatala wi kai tonu. Well, ke te au ko mahu'inga ke tau ilo kwai pet tau kakai Tonga o tau lava alu ki ai tau loto lahi tau ilo tēnā o mai Ngaahi whamatala o tonu. So as my co-host said, be encouraged that we have Tongans out there who specialize in different fields and who, as Diane and Chris has shown today, are willing to spare their time and explain things thoroughly with us. And another encouragement, because I know Losa's got her Otago University flag waving, but you know, there are so many different career paths that our children can take in the different, and science is so wide. So, you know, encourage your children, you know, encourage them to take STEM subjects if they can, and to pursue a career similar to the careers that Diane and Chris have chosen to take. Thank you to everyone that is watching. Pamalo ke Fekau'aki, and I'll hand it over to Fekau'aki Dr. Nasi Wakauta Malo.
Malo. Malo sa malo saying. Pamalo thanks for having me. Listening ke Ngaahi Talanoa ki ku go. What I do, it's academic study of religion and theology. So it's not your usual shared stuff. So I'm working closely with my Otago University. Part of the problem because we go mahina bit of scientific information. But mahina I resistant to scientific information. But Ngaahi foi teologia Fekau'aki no me kakai. So I think I feel my responsibility here. Academic study of religion in Talanoa, Talanoa, I mahu'inga ko ia lahi ku ngāoa ke kakai ngai. Religious misinformation ke resist ake on his science. I think that's a case for another session of lave'i in the future. I'm not volunteering. I go for malo at the fast. Ma faita'ehi'ehi he ngawe te pin pa malo I he. Uia Chris ka ma Diane ke pai tokoni ke kaveinga Tonga I hen Tonga ngai faito'o ke mauna foi. Faita'ehi'ehi he tatake fai he Losaka ma sein. Mo pai te ngawe te fini. Hufia te ngawe hanga me ka una. E faita pe kina ya fiona. Kresi mo ki Jesus Christ. Lai ha toa te mai whia lau maari mai non. Tui mau tōru ia pe whētanga. Amen.
Amen. Malo, thank you so much. Malo avito Fekau'aki.